Welcome everyone to Legal Insights. It's January 26, 2023. Kick off with some announcements. If you haven't noticed, PACO, we rolled out a new logo because we are celebrating our 50th anniversary in 2023. PACO was started in 1973 by 6 paralegals. So stay tuned for Paralegal Day. We'll be having a celebration and different things throughout the year. So that's exciting news for our organization. What else is going on? The food drive starts tomorrow. There's lots of information on the website. It also went out in PACO News of where you can drop off food items and or make a donation. Program committee, you can see all the dates on the calendars. In-house litigation roundtable, workers' comp roundtables are all coming up as well. Are there any leaders on the call, PACO leaders that have announcements? Teresa, I see you. No announcements from Pro Bono? Okay. Awesome. We'll kick off and I'll introduce our speaker today, who's Amy Seitz. Amy has been a Ohio notary for over 20 years. She created CyberSize It LLC, which is an online notary software platform, and is a certified Ohio and Montana notary trainer. After years of working within the information technology sector and with various government agencies, Amy realized the ability to offer an online resource to clients is essential, especially when the clock is ticking for most of us, right? Amy combined her experience, education, and creativity to revolutionize the online notarization process for both notaries and clients around the world. Welcome, Amy. It's good to see you again today.
Hello, good to see you. I'm dual screen, so as I look, I'm looking at Zoom, but my camera's here.
That's fine. That's fine.
That's awesome to be here. I'm excited to talk about online notarization with you guys. So, yeah. As she mentioned, I am a longtime resident here in Ohio, but with the onset of this company, I've actually been able to travel and speak at different notary engagements across the nation. And one of the things that notaries seem to struggle with is the whole identity verification and the security requirements that go behind an online session. And that's an important factor because we don't want to mess up and actually, validate someone who's not really themselves, right? So if you're ready, I'll pitch it in. Did you have any other questions before we start on it? Okay. So I have a presentation here. So I wanted to review the elements of an online notarization. There are 4 total elements, but the first one is the identity proofing. Now, depending upon your state, there's a few different ways that you can validate your signers. The most common, and it's accepted in all of the states that do online notarization, is knowledge-based authentication questions. These are questions like, there are 5 questions, 5 possible answers. You have 2 minutes to complete them. And these are questions like, where were you born? What color is your car? What city is this street located in? What are the numbers that go with this address? And it would be an address that that person had previously lived at. I'm sure you see these when you get onto like banks, things of that nature that want to validate your ID. They're a good way of validating someone. However, it's easy to fake these. Like, if you were to answer these questions about your mom or your dad or your daughter or your sister or your brother, you'd know where they lived, you'd know what color their car is, you'd know where they were born, right? So we can't trust that these alone validate somebody as themselves. And as I mentioned, there are a few other options. Unfortunately, in Ohio, we don't have another option. These options are not available across the board. So keep that in mind. You definitely need to know what your state can do before exploring these alternative verifications. The first one is biometric verification. And when we hear biometrics, everyone's thinking, oh my gosh, like fingerprints, eye scan. No, it's not that detailed. What it does is the signer will upload the image of their ID, and then they take a selfie. And then the system will gauge whether their ID photo matches the selfie and give them a score. So it's going to measure like the bridge of their nose to the span of their ears. It's going to measure like their jawline. And this works really great for seniors that can't remember all of those horrible questions. It also works for those that are just turned 18 or don't have any credit or any public record information in their file. So if they've never owned a car, we can't ask them about their car. If they've never owned a house, we can't ask them about addresses. So it gets really hard when someone hasn't been super productive with their investments. The more they invest in their name, the more they'll get questions. But and there is a good possibility that a lot of people won't get questions. Another example would be international signers. We can only search public records for United States. So if they've never lived here, we can't create the questions for them. So this would be a good option. There are currently 9 states that allow for this, and I'll give you the rundown. Are you ready? It's New Jersey, Virginia, Florida, Montana, Utah, Missouri, Wyoming, Louisiana, and the U.S. territory of Guam. So if you're in one of those states, you have the option to utilize this verification method, so long as your software platform has it available for you to use. The other option is digital certificate verification. Now, this one's a little bit more complex because the signer actually has to have this done way ahead of time. But there's companies like IdenTrust or Intesi Group where you can go and you could purchase this digital signature file. And what it says is when you sign a document using that specific digital certificate, it provides validation that you are you, because it's a software file that no one else can get. And when you purchase it, you have to go through the verification to prove that you're you. The software platform has to be able to support this, and it's not, like I said, they have to have done all of this other stuff previously, so it's not really widely known. So you don't see this very often. There are 3 states. See, our funnel's getting smaller, right? 3 states that will allow for this, and that is Virginia, Wyoming, and Montana. So if you're in those states and your client, maybe their ID expired, but they have this and it's not expired, they would be able to use this verification in lieu of questions or in lieu of biometric verification. Of these 3, no matter what state you're in, a client has to do one. Whichever one is approved for your state, that is what the client must do, okay? The next segment that they have to do is they have to have their ID verified. It's called credential analysis. And, when we go and we see someone in person and they hand us their ID, we're looking to make sure it's obvious, there's no obvious signs that it's forgery. But when they upload an image, sometimes it's pretty easy to, alter those images. This is where we validate that they did not alter anything. They upload their ID. The software system, that's your RON platform, will analyze the front and back. If it's like a driver's license, it's going to read the barcode and make sure the barcode reads exactly what it read on the front of the ID. So when they upload that ID, the system actually reads all of the font, make sure the image is the right size, make sure the holograms are in the right spot, and then it compares it to the barcode on the back to ensure that everything is kosher, which is a little bit more in depth than what we would even do in person. You know, in person, we're going to look at it, we're going to look at them, we're going to, you know, maybe do it a little shake, make sure it's not, you know, it's got the right weight. But this system actually analyzes for the minute details. Now, because it's so particular, this process can get very tedious for the client. Think of it like when you're uploading your check to deposit into the bank. And then I do Huntington and I love Huntington, but when I take the picture, it sometimes will tell me the amount deposited doesn't match the check. And I'm like, yeah, it does. Yeah, it does. And I gotta keep taking the photo until it actually matches, it sees the number the right way. It's the same way with this ID verification. When they take the photo, if there's a little glare, if it's a little skewed, if it's cut off, it's going to kick it back and say, nope, try again. And clients get really irritated, but there isn't anything we can do. It is required in all states that they have to be able to have their ID verified in this manner. The third option, or third part of verification. Now, real quick, I did not touch on personal knowledge or credible witness. We're going to assume in this demonstration that you don't know the person who's connecting with you. There's other ways that go into a lot more depth, but there's a lot of ifs, ands, or buts about those. So there are a few other options, but I wanted to go through the automated options. All right. The next step in the process is you have to be on a live audio video session. So at this point, the client's done their first verification, they've uploaded their ID, and now they're going to get on to a session similar to like what we're on right now. You're going to be able to see them, you're going to be able to hear them, and they're going to be able to see and hear you. It has to be recorded, and it has to be tied to the notarization path. So when we go through the system, you've got this journal tracking system. Every platform has it, and it's going to say, this person did KBA, they uploaded their ID, here's the video recording, and then finally at the end, it'll say, here's the notarized document. All right. That is what a RON platform is. And I've seen here recently people that are just kind of going, well, it's just Zoom and an Adobe sign. I don't need to do anything special, but it really is more than just that. So with this recording, different states have different requirements. However, you basically need to have the client say their name. You have to have the client show their ID to the camera, and you've got to be comparing it to the ID that actually was uploaded. Because right now, the system may have said they've matched everything that they need to match automatically to be themselves, but the buck stops with the notary. You are still performing the notarial requirement of ID verification. And if they don't have the ID and the face doesn't match the face on your video screen, it's your responsibility to terminate and not proceed with the notarization. Another thing to remember is in this video session, you need to be performing the technical notary act. And when I say that, I mean, you need to ask, are they signing of their own free will? Do you understand the document? You know, do you understand what the document's going to do? Whatever your spiel is, put them under oath. And that's not done by the platforms at all. That is always the notary's responsibility. So in this video session, you'll do this fourth aspect will be simultaneous. And that is signing and rendering the document tamper evident. So everyone will electronically sign the documents. And once they're done, the file is, I'm trying to think of a fancy word and blanking on it. It's locked. So that means when you open it, it's going to have that little bar across the top with the signature panel. And if you try to hit the edit button, it's going to say this document has been signed and cannot be altered. There's always ways to get around it, but that original file needs to be completely locked, because if it ever gets changed, you need to know, you need to be able to see that it was altered so that it renders it invalid. Next, in this document, every signature has to have a valid digital certificate. And like I mentioned before, that digital certificate, it just basically validates that that electronic signature was placed at this specific date and time within the same transaction as all of the other signatures. And a lot of times it gives the location of where that person was in the digital footprint of where they signed. So if I was signing in China, my IP address will show that I'm physically in China, and that's encoded behind that signature. It allows for verification that everyone really truly met at the same time. Obviously, it doesn't prove that you were on video or that you did anything else, but it does stand. If you've got a document, you can validate, okay, transaction, 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 they're all same, perfect. There's no reason to doubt that it was done legally or illegally. So in a recap, the client has to do one form of ID proofing, and that is KBA, biometrics, or digital certificate verification, depending upon your state law requirements. They have to do credential analysis. They have to be in a live video session that's recorded, and the end result has to be a tamper evident document. So that is pretty much all of the different aspects. So now I see I'm quick. Look at that. I gave you guys lots of time to talk.
That was super quick. What kind of questions does everyone have for Amy?
I am actually pulling a document that I signed. Here, one moment here. I'm gonna find where it opened at. And I can show you them what a digital certificate looks like. So this is a signed document. It's a real estate document. I closed on it this morning with them. And you could see the signature panel. And you can go here and I could see the certificate details. And I can tell that it was all digitally signed. I can go in here and I can click on any of these signatures, and it's going to show me the verification and the transaction number. So see, it ends in RXS. I'm not going to read all of it, but now I can click the next one and it's going to show me RXS. In addition to that, my electronic stamp also validates that it was all applied in the same transaction. If I go and try to edit this, I'm going to get an error message. And that is how you tell. And the other thing is, when you do an online notarization, the actual soft file is the actual original. A lot of times, if someone's going to use it for printed purposes, states like in Ohio, you have to have this document in order to record it with the recorder's office. And this document is just an authentication that the printed file is a copy of the original electronic document. And the notary, so me in this document, would have to go to a different notary and swear under oath that the printed session document is in fact the same document. Not every state requires the notarized oath that it is done. A lot of times there's just a simple little semi-notarial certificate you just add to the printed document. You don't stamp it, you just sign it. That's just a statement. However, every state's a little bit different. So if you are doing any kind of real estate work in Ohio specifically, remember that any online notarization has to be followed up with this validation that the notary did it online.
Can that be notarized electronically as well?
It depends on the recorder's office that it's going to. Some will take it electronic, some won't. And some won't, some will allow for you to wet sign it with a notary and then scan it and then send it over to them. But some want the actual original signatures. So you'll want to check with the recorder's office before you go through all of that and then end up backtracking. Oh my gosh, I need this now. So when I got a chat question here. So it says, how do you purchase the RON platform and how much does it typically cost? So every state has different requirements for the RON platforms. When you go and start looking, you need to look at your state Secretary of State's website and say, does my state limit the platforms for which I can use? And if they do, then you want to start with those. After that, you want to look for platforms that are independent or hybrid. So independent means you're bringing all of your own work to the platform. Hybrid means you can bring your own work and you might be able to get work from them too. It's kind of like a two-way street. Once you've narrowed down your search to the platform that will work for your clients, and that's the key word here, you want a platform that's going to meet the needs of the clients you plan to market to. And when I say that, some platforms require social security numbers, some platforms require a USA-based cell phone, and things like WhatsApp or Google Voice won't work for your clients. So you'll run into a pickle if that's the kind of client that you're marketing to, if they can't get through the standard process of your platform. Sorry. And after you've narrowed that list down, that's when you would actually go to the platform's website and sign up with them. Typically, platforms charge a monthly or annual subscription fee, and that gives you access to the system itself. In addition to that access, you have to pay a per transaction fee, and that is done usually at the time of the transaction. Some of them require you to buy the credits ahead of time, and then they deduct them out of there. And then others, like mine, you just charge your credit card the exact amount every time that you're doing it. These transaction fees can vary. Usually they start at $10 for one stamp document, but if you're doing something like a real estate document, they can vary between $15 and the highest one that I know of is $60 for that singular transaction. So obviously the fee structure needs to be taken into account when you are determining which platform to use if you plan to use it for large documents. And those would be documents where you're, let's say it's a trust. If you were doing a trust, which can be 140 pages, 25 notary acts, if the platform's charging you $5 every time you do a notary act, that's $125. You know, so 25 times 5, right? 125. Now, typically they cap out at like $60, but you'll want to make sure that you're getting something where you'll get a good return on your investment in the transaction itself as well. Did that help answer that question, Deanna? Also, if you're doing real estate, you want the platform to be MISMO certified. I know in Ohio, they don't give you a list of platforms, but they do recommend a platform be MISMO certified. MISMO certified is a software verification that a platform does to ensure it meets or exceeds the state, or not the state laws, but the standard minimum requirements for an online notarization as set forth by the Mortgage Bankers Association. All right. In Ohio, if you know the person, do you skip some of the verification steps or not? So yes, so in Ohio, that's why I said there was a couple of other things that you can do instead of that. If you personally know the person, then you don't have to do the KBA and you don't have to do the ID upload. In those instances, you can skip that However, when you get on the camera, you have to state, I personally know you, Becky, and today you did not perform any ID verifications because we met in Cleveland at the convention last year, and I'm comfortable knowing that you are really you. You have to put everything audible because the recording is the public record, and that journal is separate from the recording. So you always want to go through the verbal steps. So like when I'm in a session, I would say, hi, Becky, if you went through the verification like normal, I wouldn't say anything about verification. Other states are different. Some require it. But I'd be like, hi, Becky, today we are signing a document for your daughter to get a passport. Looks like you're going to go on a trip. Woo woo. And you're not going to be there to help get that passport through the process. And she'd be like, yeah, she's going to go to France. Cool. So do you understand the document that you're signing? And I think it's a sworn statement on there. So I'm going to put you under oath. Raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear the information that you're about to provide is the truth to the best of your knowledge? Because mind you, she's not got access to sign the document yet. And she'd be like, I swear. And then I would give her access to sign the document. After that, I would get access and I would be able to put mine back on there. So you can bypass those, and it makes it very quick when you can do that. It's just not very common. However, in your law offices, most likely you will have met the client who came in to meet and consult with the attorney, and now you're just finalizing the documents. So it depends on your level of comfort as to if you really know them or not. I will say in the state of Florida, they actually define the term personal knowledge. And when they say personal knowledge, they define it as you had to have engaged, interacted with the person in a physical environment simultaneously over multiple occasions. So that means I couldn't have just bumped into you at a coffee shop and then said, oh, I personally know you. I had to have like sat and had coffee with you, and then we had another cup of coffee with each other. Then I could say, I personally know you. Multiple video sessions would not apply for them because it says physically at the same time. So, but not every state defines that. In addition to personal knowledge, another way that you can verify a signer is through oath of credible witness. We have that now in person, but it's a little, so this is where it gets tricky. So there's like the 3 levels of credible witness. One, some states don't allow it online at all. And that would be the states like Florida. Florida says in their law, they have to go through ID verification. It can be KBA or it can be biometrics, but they have to do one or the other. All right. Then you have states that say you can use credible witness if you, the notary, know the person who's the credible witness, and the credible witness knows the person who's signing. So you have to have that trifecta, that triangle of knowledge. So like I've met Becky, I could say, I know Becky, and now Becky can say, well, I know Teresa. So I can say bypass ID proofing for Becky because I personally know her. And then I could say bypass ID proofing for Teresa because oath of credible witness, Becky Lewis. See where I'm going with that? So I'm saying exactly how everyone was verified. That would be the stance for Pennsylvania, Michigan. Those are the 2 off the top of my head. You have to know the witness who knows the person. Then you have states like Ohio. And this is different than in-person law. Online law says you can have a credible witness and they can go through the automated ID proofing and use them as long as they personally know the signer. So like with my session this morning, I was doing the transaction. I had a credible witness because the client was international, and we know now international clients can't get KBA. So my credible witness validated, and my signer did not have to because of oath of credible witness. So once my credible witness did ID verification and ID upload, I was then able to swear the witness in. Do you solemnly swear that Teresa is in fact who she states to be, is the person named on the document, and is the person in the video session today? And then Becky would say, yes, I solemnly swear. And how long have you known Teresa? I've known her from here. Perfect. And then I'm done with Becky. She's just my human ID. That's all she was there for. Now I'm doing my notarization with Teresa. So it's just like if you were doing it in person, you know him. Okay, cool. How do you know him? Cool. How long? Cool. But you're just doing it online. Did I like overwhelm anyone yet? It's really not that complicated once you get doing it. The issue that I see with a lot of new RON notaries is their work is inconsistent. So it's kind of like they go through, they have a little snafu, they learn from it, but then they'll not do it again for 6 or 8 weeks. And then they go into it again and they're like, okay, I know there's a trick here and I'm supposed to do it. And then they struggle again because they're just not, practice makes perfect, right? And I tell people, don't be a rusty Ron. You got to keep getting in there and doing it and engaging in the software system. And even if it's a practice session, just to make sure that you don't forget and don't lose that smoothness that you want to have in that transaction, which would make it faster. I can tell you, even now, like yesterday, I had a session, 2 signers, 1 witness. It should have been easy. They were USA citizens. It was an hour and 15 minutes because he couldn't figure out how to clear his signature and put his middle name into the box. He had to put first, middle, last. And when he did it, it was only first, last. So we had to walk him through editing that. And he just didn't want to listen to us. We kept telling him, click it. It'll give you the option. Just click it. That's one of those moments, put your hands through Zoom and just like strangle someone. But I've also had sessions where it goes so fast. Like we just did a closing at 11 o'clock and I was worried because I was presenting here today at noon. I was like, oh, if this goes bad, I'm going to be late. The whole closing took 11 minutes. And that includes verification. So, it just depends on the technical skill set of your signer. So I will say my record is 5 closings, 5 real estate selling sides in 30 minutes with the same seller.
Wow, that's amazing. Because I mean, when you're in person, it feels like it takes an hour for one.
Well, you know what? Here's the biggest difference between in person and online. When you're doing a seller side in person, the package is between 80 and 125 pages, right? Mine are 8, maybe 30. They only send me the documents that have to be done with a notary. They do everything else on the back end without me.
Nice.
Now you will get, like, if you do get a full buyer's package, it will have everything as if you were in person. But typically with the seller side, I very rarely see any over 50 pages unless there's a whole lot of sellers. So like I had one where there were 6 siblings selling a property that they had inherited. And because there were so many people, there was a whole lot of extra pages that had to be notarized. But yeah. Well, the other thing to think about, in lieu of no questions, I'll make up my own. The other thing to think about is when performing these, it's not always going to be accepted. Even though the government law allows for electronic notarizations to be legal in all 50 states, that does not mean the receiving agency has to take them. So if you were to do a financial power of attorney electronically, and the client prints that and takes it into the bank can determine whether or not they'll allow for it, because they don't always allow for electronic signatures. That's the things. They want that wet signature, kind of like the recorder's office and when we were talking about that certificate. So when your client is coming to you, always make sure that they've validated that whoever they're going to use it with will allow the use of electronic signatures. I never tell them, ask if you can do an online notarization for this, because when they call the company and they say, I need to know if I can use an online notary, and it's not so well known. So that agent that's responding to their question is going to be like, I've not heard of that, so I'm going to go with no. But if they call and they say, can we sign this with electronic signatures? That agent's going to exactly know what they're doing, and it's not uncommon terminology for them now, and they're going to get more yeses. You see where the difference in the terminology matters? I also don't say RON or online notarization to clients. I tell them virtual notarization, because they understand the word virtual. If I go, oh, I'm a remote online notary, no consumer is going to know what that is. It's like speaking a foreign language. They'll be like, cool. What do you want me to do with that? Right? So when I discuss it, I always try to use a common term that they are very familiar with. Another aspect to keep in mind when you're working with RON is that certain states limit the abilities of a RON notary. For instance, in Ohio, we can't do an online deposition. But I happen to know that a Pennsylvania notary can. And in Pennsylvania's laws, they do not have to do the ID proofing. They don't have to do the KBA, and they don't have to do the ID upload for a deposition. The client literally can just jump on Zoom. They don't even need a platform for that. They can jump on Zoom, hold their ID up, be sworn in. As long as that notary retains the video, that's all they legally have to do for a deposition. So you can use those different laws to your advantages. So if you are a Florida notary and your client is international, but their ID is expired, they can't get KBA, and Florida can't use a credible witness. So, and you can't do biometrics without a valid ID. So they're kind of up creek, right? Well, knowing that other states can do credible witness, then they can go to another state and say, I need a notary from Ohio so that we can use oath of credible witness for my client. So knowing the different states helps you know how to pivot for your client. An example also would be like Maryland won't allow their notaries to do wills or trusts. So if you've got a client and you're in Maryland and they want to do a will or a trust, well, now you need to look outside of your state for a notary in another state. Another thing you can do with this, if you get a call for an in-person and that person says, I don't have any form of ID, and you're legally required to have like a driver's license in some states. I know Ohio's a little flexy or loosey-goosey on that, but let's say you're in Michigan, and I know you have to have a valid ID in Michigan to get a notarization in person. And if you don't have that, Michigan notaries can only do credible witness if they know the witness who knows the person, okay? So now this in-person session can't be done with this notary, but the notary doesn't want to lose the job, right? So now the notary says, well, let's get this done online. So now she connects to a notary in Ohio who can do credible witness without knowing the credible witness, just doing ID proofing. So now this Michigan notary created a solution that was legal for their client. So now that client will always come back to that Michigan notary because they reached outside and they pulled in their network to make it happen, make it a success. Does that make sense? I know that was a lot to take in, but I piggyback off notaries all day long because we can't do biometrics. If a client fails KBA, I can send them to a notary in one of those biometric states and they can still get the closing done at the same time that they were planning to. And here's an example too. So that piggybacks on here. So if you're using knowledge-based authentication questions, or KBA, as I keep referring to them, and your client fails, they can only fail it 2 times, or they can fail it once, but if they fail it twice, you have to wait 24 hours before moving forward. So that means the client has to wait a full 24 hours before you, the notary, can do that notarization. And you cannot legally just jump on a different platform and have them try it again. The law states the notary cannot move forward for 24 hours. That means now the client can go to a different notary and do it again, but they cannot do it with you. You're restricted. So in those instances, if your client failed KBA, you've got 2 options. Well, 3. 1, you could wait 24 hours and do it again and hope that they pass, right? 2, if you're able to use credible witness, you could see about bringing in a credible witness for the signer because that would be legal. Or 3, you could transfer it to someone who can do biometrics. Now, if you're in a biometric state and your client fails KBA, you can immediately transfer to a biometric path, dependent upon your platform and if it'll allow for it. Because the law doesn't say they can't switch. It just says they can't do KBA again. It only restricts the amount of times they can do the quiz. So switching to a different path, if it's legal for you, is a very viable option for those notaries. Have I given you guys some ideas to help you sell it to your clients, or even ideas on how you can work together as a team to make it successful for you? Well, I'm going to leave you with one more segment because this is all about Ron. When we go to notarize a document online, everyone thinks, well, we can do anything. We can do anything online, right? And if the signer's in the United States and the document is not restricted by your state law, you can do anything. It could be going to a foreign country. It could be getting an apostille, which is a legalization, a certification of the notary who performed it, that Secretary of State does, if you don't know what that is. As long as the signer's in the United States, you're not really restricted other than your state laws. However, if the signer is in New Zealand, and the signer can be a US citizen, and they're on vacation in New Zealand, and they find it, they need to have a document notarized and they need to use it in New Zealand, right? I mean, they're there and they need something filed. You would think it would be completely legal. They're a US citizen, right? They're going to get KBA. They're going to be able to validate. They got an ID. Unfortunately, because his feet are in a foreign country at the time of the session, and the document is not being used in the United States, we cannot notarize that. And that's the law for all RON states. So location doesn't matter if the document is coming to the United States. And it could be used for real estate. It could be used because mom and dad are in France and the son got the car towed and it's in the impound lot. It's going to be used at that impound lot in the United States. Get it? I'm getting a passport for my child and her dad's in Egypt. Well, that document's going to be filed in the United States. So we can do those. But the moment that person is overseas and that document is not being used in the United States, we can't do it. I had a call from a client. She was in India and she needed to sign a power of attorney for her brother in Texas. We were able to do that because her brother was going to use it in Texas, right? Well, then she calls me a week later and she's like, Amy, I've got another power of attorney I need done. And when I get it, it's basically a power of attorney over her property in India. And it would be used for an Indian probate court. I couldn't do that one because it wasn't for us. Make sense?
Mhm.
The other thing to keep in mind is even though you're a virtual notary, you still have to obey your commission limitations, which means I here in Ohio have to be in Ohio. If I'm on vacation in Florida on the beach, I cannot be doing online notarizations. Yes, they will know. It is apparent in every document where your physical location was at the time of signing. It's not like visible to the naked eye, but it is in the encoding as to where everyone was. Some states, specifically Virginia, will allow for an alteration of that. So their notaries can notarize if they were outside of the state of Virginia, but only if the document is going to be used in Virginia. So keep in mind your state law on those limits as well.
Hey, Amy, I have a question for everyone on the call. How many people already are a remote, virtual, online, whichever term you want to use, notary? Teresa is. Anybody else? Heather is. Yeah, I myself don't know very many people that are a virtual notary. Oh, Mindy is. Yep, Miss Mindy is. There's 3.
So it's something where, honestly, I got into it only because my work wanted me to learn it. I used to work where I validated notarial certificates for government bids. So I had to understand the process of it. And I didn't actually do anything. So I've been a RON since 2019. And I didn't do anything with it. I did my very first notarization January 1st of 21. And after that, I was just like, oh, wow, I absolutely love this. But I'm an IT geek, if you haven't figured that out. And at that point, I was like, okay, why aren't more people doing this? And when I started advertising, everyone kept thinking I was a fraud, I was a fake. You know, people didn't understand the concept that it was legal or how it worked, and they were uncomfortable with the unknown. And when you become a RON, you've got to kind of transition your client base. And I think if I would have had the in-person client base, I probably would not have been a very successful RON right out the gate like I was. So I went from 0 to 2,000 a week in 7 weeks. But I only offer RON. When my clients call, I tell people this. If you go to Krispy Kreme, we all know what you want. You want that hot, fresh donut, that glazed donut, right? So you go and you every time, oh, I want a dozen, I want a dozen, I want a dozen. So if tomorrow Krispy Kreme starts offering pie, you're going to go in there and they'll be like, oh, would you like some pie today? And you'd be like, no, I just want my donut. No, just my donut. Why are you making pie? And that's kind of how the perception of your clients. So then you end up giving them a donut because that's what they want, because you don't want to lose the client, right? So you got a client and you say, oh, I'm certified as an online notary now. Let's do it this way. And your client's, I don't know about that. Yeah, can you just come? I really don't want to do that. And you're gonna be like, yeah, we can still do it that way. I'll fit you in on this day, this time. So because you're still giving them the Krispy Kreme donut, they're not really going to try the pie. Why should they? So if you go into this, try selling the pie before you pay the money to be a RON. You can always connect to another notary and have it done if you're not ready. and not lose the client online and get it done. But once you start seeing that you're selling more pie, then invest and become an online notary. So what that would look like is, Becky, you're not an online notary, but you could start telling your clients, hey, would you like to get this done online? And then you charge your client, and you call me and say, Amy, I've got a client, they need a 1-stamp document. How much will you charge me to do this for them? I give you a price, you upsell it to your client, you get the difference. So we all make money, right? Your client gets a legal notarization. They try something new. They come out of their comfort zone, and you now have a client that'll come back, and when they want another notarization, it'll be an easy sell. So now you get 4 or 5 of those, and maybe you get them coming in a 2-week time frame, right? Well, now you go and say, okay, now I'm going to invest, because here in Ohio, you have to pay $250 for that class. And then you have to pay the filing fee, and then you have to pay for the platform. So you're going to look at like $1,000 all said and done right out the gate just to start. And if you don't have the clients yet, that's going to get very frustrating.
Interesting. And Christine, I see your note. Yeah, we've wondered how many people in PACO are actually Iran. And Teresa and Mindy were the only 2 I was aware of. So yeah, we can absolutely start like some kind of, I don't know how or where, but Heather Jones is a notary, or Iran. Carrie Davis. Is Samantha Bothman Iran? No? Okay. So there's 4 people in PACO right there. I don't know a whole lot of people that have this. Teresa, do you?
No, and I can tell you from my own personal experience, and I know this to be true for Mindy as well. I don't know about others, but many of us who have the certification are limited to serving only our firm's clients. Like if you were to call me and say, unlike with Amy, if you were to call me and say, hey, Teresa, could you remotely notarize this document for me? I'm not able to do that, because mine is tied to my firm. My firm has paid all the fees. My firm has purchased the platform. My firm manages it all. And as a courtesy to the firm's clients, if a client in our firm needs something notarized, they just reach out to me, and I manage. And keep in mind, I'm in a relatively large mid-sized firm, and we have 7 or 8 offices in 4 states plus DC. So, my scope is national as far as clientele, but I am limited. I actually looked into purchasing my own license to do this on the side, and I couldn't, like what Amy just said, I couldn't sell it. I couldn't get people to justify it for my personal expense. The one thing that my firm does allow me to do, as far as serving clients outside of my firm's listing, is for legal aid. I can notarize documents for legal aid, and my firm will absorb that and write that off. But that's the only exception. I think most of the people who, like I said, I know Mindy, who have it, they're limited to only serving their firm's clients.
Yeah, and Heather put a note saying for her. So if that's true, then the 4 of you are all limited to your firms. So Amy Seitz, our speaker today, would be a great resource for anyone on the call that needs an online notary service. Amy, can you put your contact information in chat for everyone?
Yeah, actually, if you go to that site, as a firm, you would click on For Businesses, and you can create a free profile, and you can connect with notaries across the nation that are on the platform. So let's say you need a Spanish speaking notary. You have the ability to filter and find a Spanish speaking notary to do it. Russian, we've got Mandarin, French, German, all kinds of languages. And I think we even have someone that does American Sign Language too. So if you've got clients that need that, you can do that. You just pay a transaction fee every time you do it, and it automatically pays the notary. So you don't even, when you get the chart, when you do the quote, it'll give you the full breakdown. This is how much you will pay for this transaction. And so then you know exactly how much to add to it to make it worthwhile for you when you bill the client. You can also email us. But what I also wanted to mention was not all software systems limit you the way that you are limited there, Teresa. So let's say if a business enterprise purchased your platform with us here at Cyberize It, we allow you the ability to say, okay, I'm charging my firm's card for this transaction, but this transaction, I can send it and the client's going to pay with their credit card. So then you would have been able to do that transaction on our system. You could even say, I'm going to use my own credit card and bill the client directly myself. So our system allows you the flexibility. So it really comes down to the software which you're using. Now, there are a few out there that are quote unquote free, but be very careful with that because a lot of them will steal your clients or they'll market to them. So you don't want to start putting your client list into something that people are going to try and take it away from you. You know, you don't want to be undercut, right?
Mm-hmm.
So.
Absolutely. Any more questions? No questions in the chat. Amy, great. Thank you for being a resource to PAYCO and for being here today to share this information.
Well, thank you for having me. I had a blast. Oh, now on a side note, one thing that I would also recommend is never lose the human element. All right. Valentine's Day is coming up. That's how I answer the camera. It works. I have a happy birthday one. So when I look at their ID, if it's their birthday, I put a happy birthday hat on. It makes people feel like they're not just talking to a computer.
Right. Exactly. Well, thank you so much. We really appreciate your time, taking the time to do this for all of us. And I'm sure others will be in touch with you soon on the call. Thank you
Wonderful.
so much.
Thank you,
Bye,
guys.
everybody. Have a great day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.